I don't know, these again are very small. This group here in red vests, I'm in there. I was a waiter at a place called Banner Lodge in Moodus, Connecticut, between the summers of my first and second year of law school. It was toward the end of that first year, that first summer, that I met my wife.
Good morning. Tom Galuccio, President of the Westerly Historical Society, on our ongoing Reflections oral interview program. I have the pleasure of being in the company of Matthew Lewiss this morning. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Tom, and thank you so much for having me. I consider this a real honor and a pleasure to do this, and it is going to be an opportunity to express my feelings about how much the town of Westerly and its citizens mean to me.
Wonderful. How did Matthew Lewiss get started? Tell us about your grandparents, parents, and your entrance into the world.
So, my mother's family was from Providence. My mother was born and brought up in Providence, and she went to classical high school, graduated high school, did not go beyond high school, and met my father while he was attending Rhode Island College of Education. Her father was a wholesale fruit and vegetable dealer in Providence. And he, from what I understand, he was quite elderly at the time I was born, but from what I understand, it was a very successful business and very profitable. And when he passed away, it was taken over by one of his sons, Harold Gertz. My father's family, his parents were born in Lithuania and came to the United States in the very early 1900s. His father first settled in Norwich, Connecticut, because he had a cousin who was in the junk business in Norwich, and he went to work with him in Norwich. At some time, I believe around 1912 or thereabouts, they moved to Westerly, and he opened up his own junk business on Canal Street, which was, again, very successful. And he was a hard worker. Upon his passing, the business was taken over by one of his sons, Abraham. The family name was Ichkowich, and I'll tell you in a minute how my name got to be Lewis. Abe worked with his father in the junk business, and I remember as a little kid, we were very close, and we went down there a lot. If I helped my grandmother do certain things, she had a huge china closet, and on the top shelf was a bowl of candy. And if I was a good boy and I helped out, I got 3 pieces of candy. If I didn't get any. So we had really
great motivation.
A close relationship. So my father, both my father and mother were born in the United States. My father was born in Westerly. My mother was born in Providence. My father went all through the Westerly School System. He was a good student. He was a good athlete. He played football. He played baseball and basketball. And he was the first one in his family of 9 to go to college. And he went to the Rhode Island College of Education because he decided he wanted to be a teacher. While he was in Providence, located there, he met my mother, and they started dating. Subsequently, just after he graduated, they got married and they moved to Westerly. And we were also very close, both families we were very close with, both my mother's and father's family, especially on my mother's side. She had a sister who lived in Woonsocket, and her husband was a manager of one of the mills in Woonsocket. And I remember as a young boy spending many weekends. She had 2 boys and a girl about the same ages as my sister Donna and me. Donna was 2 years older than me. And we would pack into one bedroom, all 5 kids. And, you know, at that age, it was not a big deal for boys and girls to sleep together. But anyway, and then there were many weekends. They used to love to come down to Westerly, especially in the summer, because we would get down to Watchhog Pond and have a picnic and swim in the water, and they didn't have that up in Woonsocket. So Westerly was a big draw for them to come here. So my father, when he graduated, he gave thought to the idea that he was going to be teaching elementary school children, and he decided that the name Ichkowich was going to be very difficult for young children to pronounce, and also some of the side slang part of itch, B-I-T-C-H, that type of thing. So he legally changed, his middle name was Lewis, Joseph Lewis Ichkowich, with 1 S. So he legally changed his name to Lewis, but he wanted to be a little bit different, so he added a second S. So that's why my name is Lewiss. And I can tell you over the years, I have to emphasize that profusely, because people, you know, until they get to know me and the family, you know, it's always 1 S. So anyway, they got married and they moved to Westerly, and they first moved over to Cherry Street in Pawcatuck. My sister Donna was born at the Westerly Hospital while they lived in Cherry Street. And then in July 6th of 1939, I was also born at the Westerly Hospital, and they were still living on Cherry Street. I believe it was in 1943 that they moved to Westerly. And they moved to, the legal address was 88.5 High Street. But I don't know if, do you remember the Alba Inn? No. Okay, above China Village. So it was in back of the Alba Inn. And there, if you went up that driveway, which is the last entrance before the park on the right, the Vetterito family lived in one house. Then as you made the curve, a family by the name of Desatel lived in the left house. And then next to him, Mike Vaca had a nursery and had planted Christmas trees there. The house that we lived in on the right-hand side was a 2-family, and it was owned by, we lived on the first floor, and it was owned by the Capuccio family, Louis and Frank's parents. Louis and Frank were, well, let's see, Frank is, yeah, they're both deceased now, I think. Yeah, they were lawyers, yeah. So they had the second and third floor. Then across the street was a 3-family. On the first floor was a family by the name of Neil and Margaret Kate. They had come over from Germany, and Mr. Kate worked at George C. Moore Company as a fireman. But he was very handy, and I remember he made me a wooden cart, and we called it the Red Devil because he painted it, and I used to scoot around the neighborhood with it, and we were quite friendly with them. On the second floor, the Sposato family lived, Charlie and Lois Sposato, who Lois is married to Sam Cafone, and Charlie was married to Jean Romanella. They lived on the second floor. And on the third floor was a woman, Mary Tuff was her name. She was a widow, and she lived on the third floor with her daughter. So it was, you know, it was a nice, tight neighborhood. I mean, 4th of July, we always had big parties. I mean, everybody got together. You celebrated each other's birthdays and things of that nature. And we did a lot of things together, and it was really very, very nice growing up. Getting to that, as soon as, you know, my father would let me go on my own, I would just walk down those stairs by the Alba Inn, because Canal Street was right there. And one of my favorite spots was across the street was an Army-Navy store. And when I got involved with Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, one of my projects was, and I still have it to this day, and I'm going to donate it to the Armory, but I have I call it beautiful because it is. I made it's about 5 by 8 board covered with silk, and it's got all sorts of Army medals and Navy medals, service medals that I collected, right after World War II. And I got the money to buy those from my newspaper route, because as soon as I was able to, I got a job delivering newspapers. And I was, impressed at a young age by, frankly, how hard my father worked. He loved teaching, he loved kids, and the kids came first, no matter what. Money was always secondary, but it was a struggle, and it was a little bit difficult because my mother, on the other hand, her father was, as I understand it, fairly well-to-do. He had a very, very successful, wholesale business, and I understand he did quite well. But my father, I remember during World War II, he worked for the New London News Company, which was down on Canal Street. And on the weekends, we would get newspapers and magazines and deliver those to Burlingame, the Army camp, and also to the Charleston Naval Air Station. And we did that, I would go with him. And then being a school teacher, he had the summers off, so he and this other gentleman, Sam Snitkin, who worked at the news company, they, along with Ray Payne, Jack Payne, the lawyer, his dad was also a school teacher, very friendly with my dad, and he helped them build this store at Mesquamacut called Joe Sam's. As you came down Winterport Road and came to Atlantic Avenue, diagonally to the right was a piece of land. They didn't own it. It was owned by the Leone family, who lived right next door to Real's store on High Street. And their son, Michael, was a good friend of mine. He was in my class, Mike Leone, and his father was a jeweler. And I remember every time I would visit there, he had like a little workshop out on the porch, and he always had gold and silver and watches and bracelets, and he did absolutely beautiful work. So anyway, they rented that piece of land from the Leone family, and they built a store there called Joe Sam's. And in the back was also a parking lot. And then a few years later, they built a tiny little store up on the beach, which just sold hot dogs, hamburgers, and ice cream. But the big store had everything, including magazines, popcorn and all that stuff and everything else. And in the front of the store, toward the street, they built a big seat. And that was essentially for the kids whose families were there, during the summer, or were there on vacation. And the deal was, and I'm talking now like the late 40s, you could, as long as the kids, they verified with the parents, the kids could come and they could have their charge accounts. So if they wanted an ice cream, if they wanted a bag of popcorn, if they wanted a soda, they wanted a hamburger or a hot dog or anything like that, and if they did that, then they got it. They could take a comic book, and we had a ton of comic books. They could sit on the seat in the front, eat what they had, or they didn't have to eat, read the comic books and everything else. So people over the years, it's amazing, who remember that, who come back and came to Mesquamacut as vacationers with their families back in the late 40s and the early 50s. And they remember the bench, but there was one caveat. You had to clear, if you had a charge, every Friday you had to pay it up in full. Otherwise, you couldn't charge anymore.
That's good business.
Yeah, so I mean, it was really, really, really something. And also, in addition to the store, I would go with my father early in the morning. We had a newspaper. We delivered newspapers. And we would start in Watch Hill at Holdridge's, Lanfear's Garage, then Holdridge's Garage, and then Nash's News Store, which was next to the merry-go-round, the Ocean House, and then into Musquamacut, and go all the way to the Weekapaw again, and then come back and then open up the store. So from the time I was, 7 years old, 8 years old, I was working, and I got paid. And when I was 9, I started I got a newspaper route with the Westerly Sun, and so I was determined to make money. And that was one of the things, jumping ahead, that decided that I thought at one point I wanted to become a teacher. And I did teach for a short time between college and law school, but the pay was, crazy, especially if you wanted to have a family. It was okay if you were a single person, but to raise a family on a teacher's salary was extremely, extremely difficult.
Well, speaking of teaching, where'd you go to school, elementary school?
Okay, so I started off kindergarten. There was a woman by the name of Virginia Chenier who lived on Ward Avenue, and she had a small kindergarten in her house. And I want to say there were maybe about a dozen of us in the class. On Grove Avenue, Charlie and Ruth Vars lived there. Charlie was in my sister Donna's class. Ruth was in my class, and we were good friends. So Ruth and I, there was a McNeil girl, Cammie McNeil, I think Neil Thorpe. First grade, I started at Park Avenue, which is now the church. Yep. So I went from 1 to 4 at Park Avenue. Fifth grade, we had to go to Elm Street for the fifth grade. And then sixth grade, we went to Babcock Junior High. So 6 through 9 at Babcock. 10th grade, 11 and 12 was at Westerly High School. Very quick, funny story. I think when I was both of my parents were very musically inclined. And, we learned to dance, my sister and I, at a very young age. I remember on Sundays, we had a big old radio. This was before before TV. On Sunday around noontime at 1 o'clock, there was, they would turn on the radio, and they would dance and so forth. They taught us to dance. Music became a very important part. And my mother, as a young girl, had played the soprano saxophone, and it was left in Providence at their family home up there. Well, when my Uncle Jack died, he was the last one to live in the house. They were going to sell the house and everything. So we went up, and all the families took what they wanted. And I spotted this mangy old case. And I said to my mother, "Mom, what's that?" She says, "Oh, that's my soprano sax." And I opened it up, and of course, it wasn't all beautiful and guilty because it had been sitting there for, 20-some years, but we took it. I took it to Mr. Benson in town, Phil Benson. I don't know if you remember him, but he had a music studio up on the second floor on High Street, and he sent it away. He had it all refinished, new mouthpiece and everything else, and I learned to play the soprano saxophone. Before that, we're taking lessons, and I disliked piano lessons intensely. Mrs. Sherman, Pop Sherman, who was a school teacher in Westerly, over on the corner of Chestnut Street and Beach Street. They lived on the corner there. And I disliked piano lessons intensely. But so when it came time to switch to the saxophone, I learned how to play it, and I absolutely loved it. Trying to think, I think Al Wood was the music teacher in the Westerly School System at the time, and he was terrific. And then in later years, I became a part of a group called the Five Chords. By that time, I was playing the tenor saxophone. Pat Ligori was playing trumpet. Ronnie Galuscio, was he your uncle? Yeah. Ronnie played the alto sax. Anthony Turco played the piano, and Louis Garofalo played the drums. And we would play at weddings, at dances, at club parties, and things of that nature. Tommy Santoro, he used to get us in at least twice a month to the Veterans Club on Pierce Street. There was a little club there and usually on a Friday night. I remember playing over at the Greenhaven Inn for several weddings over in Pawcatuck, and so we made a lot of money to the point where I was able to buy my own tenor sax, which was about $400 at the time. That was a lot of money. So music was an important part. Sports was always very important. My dad being the athlete he was, we learned to, we played catch outside all the time. And then on Saturday mornings, starting when we were probably about 7th or 8th grade, we would get to go up to the junior high school athletic field, and we would have pickup games of football. I can't believe that we used to play tackle football back then as kids with no equipment. And one of the teams came out of White Rock, and they had a couple of big fellas playing for them. There were two brothers, the Burrow brothers, Tommy and Jimmy, who were big boys. And we got knocked around pretty bad. One of my friends, Johnny Harding, who lived on Park Avenue right near the school, he got knocked down and they fractured his shoulder. And Johnny Stevens, whose father was the principal of the high school, he got knocked out, and they did a job on his back. He ended up having surgery at Rhode Island Hospital. So, I mean, we played pretty tough. But Saturdays were great because when the weather was great, we played ball in the morning. We would get downtown to the Terminal Lunch, Gingerella's place, get a meatball grinder. I think it was maybe 30 cents, 35 cents, and then go to the matinee at the United Theater for 15 cents for the 2 o'clock matinee. So, I mean, we did a lot. I mean, we really did. We did our homework, but we were active in school. We were active in activities. We were all active with our respective religions, churches, and synagogues. And, it was great growing up. And in the summers, we had the beach. As I said, from 46 to 54, my father and Sammy had Joe Sam's. So when I was old enough, I started working down there, parking cars, picking up bottles on the beach, cleaning the beach, and then gradually working in the store. And then I did go to the Y camp for several summers. I was able to do that. I wanted to go to Winnapaug because a lot of my friends were going to Winnapaug, but Winnapaug was about 3 times as expensive as the Y camp. But the Y camp was great. I mean, we had a lot of good friends, we had a lot of good times, and that was terrific. So the summers were great. And those summers, were one of the things that, and I'll get to this, ended up me coming back to Westerly at the beach. So moving on to the high school, the story. So
from what I understand, you had a busy high school career.
I did. I was in the band. I was active, with student affairs. I took a pre-college schedule, so I was very busy between the band and the acting, and also football. I played hard. I was a guard on the team, both offense and defense, and I was co-captain my senior year. And my sophomore year, John DeGangi, he was our coach my sophomore year for football. That following spring, they always had a teacher-student softball game. So we were at that game, and coach was playing. He hit the ball way out, not almost shy of the fence, just short of the fence. And there were two other teachers on base, and they were running around, and he was running around. As he got to third base, he went like this, down on the ground. So they called an ambulance. The ambulance came right away. They took him to the Westerly Hospital, and he was gone. I mean, it was really a shame. But nice man, always available, if you needed help or to talk with him. And he also, I think he taught social studies. That was sad. And John Stellitano had just come on as the basketball coach, taking over for Jimmy Federico, who was there for many years. So starting the following year, Coach John Stellitano also took on the role of being the football coach. So he was our football coach for my junior and senior years and thereafter.
And he's still known as coach today.
The coach today, yeah. What is it? He just turned 101 or something?
101, I believe.
Not too long, yeah. Yeah, he's quite a guy. I have very, very few regrets in life. Thank God, I've had a wonderful life. But one of the regrets is that I never made Eagle Scout. I was involved, very heavily with Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. And I became a Life Scout, and I had enough merit badges to become an Eagle Scout, but I was missing one merit badge in astronomy. As I got older, I helped Mrs. Singer, Dr. Jerry Singer, who was a dentist in town.
My dentist?
Your dentist? Yeah, wow. His wife, because her son Paul was active in Cub Scouts, and she was the den leader, and I was the Boy Scout leader, that was involved in that. And at one point we had a scoutmaster by the name of Jim Watson, and he worked over at Electric Boat. He was a great guy, hot ticket. And one of my very good friends, and who was also in Boy Scouts with me, a fellow by the name of Dick Gray. Dick lived in North Stonington. His father owned Consumers Dairy. And because of the farm that they lived on, he learned to drive at a very young age. And Jim was crazy, and he would let Dick, at 13 or 14 years of age, drive from Westerly over to Norwich to the pool, because that was before the Y was built and had a swimming pool, and we would go over to Norwich to the swimming pool. He would let Dick drive his car over to Norwich, then we'd stop on the way back at the Dewdrop Inn and get the I don't know if it was 10 or 15 cents hamburger and the 5-cent ice cream cone. So I mean, Boy Scouts were great.
You get out of high school, you have your mindset where you're going to go to school and what for?
I wanted to, we were family friends with the Singers. And every time I went to the dentist, to Jerry, he would tell me, oh, I just came back from this island. I just came back from this place. And I was just so impressed that, he traveled a lot. And I said, dentists make a lot of money. I think I'll go to dental school. Well, I did some research, and I saw that Tufts University in Medford, Mass. Had a 6-year program. If you successfully completed 2 years of undergraduate and you applied to the dental school and got accepted, you could finish in 6 years instead of 8. Save 2 years' time and 2 years' tuition and expenses. So I applied to Tufts, I got accepted, and that was my goal. I was going to become a dentist. And I got a scholarship. It was partially football, partially academics. So the beginning part of my second year, I was in the Pre-Dental Society, and one day about 10 of us went into downtown Boston to the dental school to observe third and fourth year students, and they worked on mostly indigent people from downtown Boston who couldn't afford to private pay a dentist. And I was assigned to a third-year student, and he had an elderly gentleman in there who was probably in his 80s, and he opened his mouth, and the odor and the decay that came out was just atrocious. And I didn't have a weak stomach by any shape, manner, or form, but I finished up, and I walked out, and I said, do I really want to do this the rest of my life? And I said, I don't think so. So I got back, and I got out of the Pre-Dental Society, and I didn't know what to do. And so I took some education courses. I became board certified in Massachusetts to teach, and I was doing some student teaching. And then I taught for a year up in Wakefield, Mass. And I enjoyed teaching very much. Teaching is not going to do it. I don't want to have to do what my father did. If I'm going to be a teacher, that's my vocation. That's my profession. So I said, gee, I think lawyers make a lot of money. Maybe I'll go to law school. So I switched to the Pre-Legal Society. And then, my senior year, I applied to law school. And as you can see, I applied to Boston University, Boston College, Rutgers, and Temple. I got accepted to all 4 of them. And I decided I wanted to stay in the Boston area, so I went to BU Law. And I had 3 wonderful years there. I was active, in different programs. The two major ones were this Homer Albers Moot Court Competition. Moot Court is like a sample court where students get up, you have a case, you represent one side or the other, and you make your arguments to a judge. My partner was a fellow by the name of Steve Cass from New Jersey, and between the two of us, we did very well, and I have documents which show that my senior year, we won the Homer Albers Moot Court Competition. Very nice. So, which was nice. The other thing that we became involved in is my second year, they started a program called the Roxbury Volunteer Defenders program. And this was where they chose 10 of us, 10 second-year students, to work. You had to work with a licensed attorney in Roxbury, Massachusetts, which is, at that time, was a very poor community, representing people who could not afford a lawyer. And it was interesting because the first case that we got assigned to was representing a woman who was charged with prostitution. So we ended up getting her off. So that was really good first-hand experience. And I've got to say, I had a wonderful law school experience. I mean, I had made really good friends. Many of them I'm still, the ones that haven't passed away, still friendly with today. The courses were good, the professors were good, the teachers. I mean, I just, thank God I had a wonderful experience. And then my first year, I get a summer position at this place called Banner Lodge in Moodus, Connecticut. And basically it was, years ago, it was a place where singles went to meet other folks. So it was, by the time I started working there, it was starting to change. It was becoming more of a family situation. But it was a beautiful, it's between Colchester and Middletown. And there was a lake there, and the lodge was great. They had a huge swimming pool. They had tennis courts. They had, even back then, they had a 9-hole golf course. I mean, the food was delicious. And we worked on tips as waiters, and we got tipped very, very well. It was toward the end of that first year, that first summer, that I met my wife. She had come with a girlfriend of hers. Florence was originally from Milton, Massachusetts, and she and her girlfriend had decided to come for a weekend. They took the train from the Boston area down somewhere near, I don't know, Hartford or whatever, and then we had several drivers who would go to the train and pick up the guests who were coming in. And one of them was a very good friend of mine by the name of Marty Pear. So Marty happened to be the one to pick up Florence and her girlfriend, and brought them back. Long story short, well, he asked her out for that Friday night. And as waiters and staff, once we finished in the dining room, we could use the facilities. And because it was initially a singles resort, they encouraged the staff to mingle with the guests. So the next day, Saturday, after I finished lunch, you cleaned up, you reset for dinner, went back to my cabin, threw on my bathing suit, went out to the swimming pool. And talking, and lo and behold, I see Florence come out of the pool. I said, oh, this is very, very attractive young woman. I think I'll go talk to her. So I went over and we started talking and everything else, and and I said, gee, I said, would you like to go out tonight? And plus the fact that I was one of the few waiters who was over 21. So in addition to waiting in the dining room to make extra money, I also worked in the bar at night. And so she says, well, I have a date. I says, oh, why don't you break it, Well, she did. So I met her, in the lounge after the show and everything else, and I brought her. I think she had a ginger ale. She didn't even drink, and every couple of minutes when I had a break from serving, I would just go over and we would talk and so on and so forth, and then I walked her back to her room, when we closed up at 12 o'clock. And then the next day, boom, she was on the train going back. And I says, well, when I get, come up to Boston, I'll call you. And I did call her a couple of days later, and the following week I had a day off, and I went up to Boston, and we went out. I met her parents. We had a very nice, day. And and then when I got back to school in the fall, we started dating, and the rest is history. June 6th of 1965, my wife graduates college. So I'm 4 years older than she is. Boston State Teachers College, University of Massachusetts. Following Sunday, June 13th, I graduate Boston University School of Law. The following Sunday, June 20th, 1965, we get married. Okay, we go on our honeymoon up to upstate New York to one of those resorts. So we had talked, and we were going to stay in the Boston area. I had a job I had been accepted with a large law firm in Boston to do trial work. Florence is a teacher, and she had a job lined up teaching in South Boston, and we were going to find a place, and we were going to stay in Boston. Second week of May of 1965, 2 weeks before final exams, my friends and I were studying in the law library, and it got to be about a Sunday, and it got to be about 12 o'clock, and it was a very hot day, and all of a sudden we all started looking at each other, and we closed our books. We says, okay, let's go to the beach for the afternoon. So we ran back to our apartments, we changed, got our bathing suits, got into, five of us struggled into one car, and we went out to Nantasket. Had a beautiful afternoon at the beach. Got to be about 6:30 at night. We hop in the car to get back down to Boston. It took us 3.5 hours to get back to Boston. The traffic was just out of control. And I said to myself, I can't do this. I'm used to being 10 minutes from the beach in Westerly. This is not going to work. Got back to the apartment. I called Florence, and I said, what do you think about going back to Westerly? And she says, what, for a visit? I says, no, to live. She says, what? She says, you don't have a job. I don't have a job. We don't have a place to live. I said, it'll all work out. It'll all work out. So I convinced her to do it. And my dad at that time was in charge of the summer school, so he got her a job teaching summer school. I was studying for the bar exam and also working for Tommy Santoro down at the Narragansett Inn. So I couldn't take the bar exam. I took it in August, but they didn't give us the results until November. So once the Narragansett Inn closed Labor Day, I went to work at the bowling alley as a bartender and so forth. And then when I found out there was a lawyer in town by the name of Harold Solovicic, and I wanted to go to work for him. I had talked to him a couple of times, and he said, when you pass the bar exam, come see me. So there was another young man by the name of Bobby Cohen. His father was Dr. David Cohen, who was an eye doctor here in Westerly, lived on Summer Street. Bobby and I took the bar exam together. And his father had a post office box downtown Westerly. My mail got delivered around noontime. Frenchie Colum, Aldedge Colum was the fellow I was working for during the day. And my mail didn't come until around noontime. Bobby's father, at the time, if you went down 7:30, 8 o'clock, they already had the mail in the box. So this particular day in November, 10 past, I'm just getting ready to leave to go to work for Frenchie, and my phone rings, and it's Bobby Cohen. And he says, did you get a letter yet? I said, no. I said, did you? And he said, yes. And I wanted to swear at him for doing it, but I wasn't. I said, how did you make out? He said, I passed. I says, congratulations. He says, when are you going to learn? I says, my mail doesn't come till around 12 or 12:15. He says, well, call me when you get your mail. I said, okay. So I went to work, and at the time, we only had one car, and my wife was taking the car to teach. So one of Frenchie's co-workers was picking me up. And we were working at Dusty Edgecombe's house on Post Road, right near the motel, in his dining room. And all morning long, all I'm doing is looking at my watch. And Frenchie was good. I mean, he knew what was going on, so he didn't say anything. So about 11:45, I said, Frenchie, I said, I got to go check my mail. I said, can you give me a ride? He says, well, it's only 11:45. He says, wait 15 minutes. I said, no, come on. So I got him. So we got there, and as you went down Cross Street, Spargo's Market was on the right-hand side. We got to Spargo's Market. Of course, I was much younger and much more athletic at that time. I jumped out of his truck, jumped over the fence, and I see the mail in my box. I opened it up, and I'm looking at it, and up at the top left it says, RI Board of Bar Examiners. So I'm holding it, and I says, all right, Matthew, you got to open this. I'll turn it over. Dear Mr. Lewiss, we are pleased to inform you that you have been... I said, oh my God, thank God. So I ran over to Frenchie's truck. I said, I passed. He says, great. He says, come on. He says, I'll go buy you lunch. I says, no. I says, I'm all done for the day. He says, Matt, he says, we're right in the middle. The chandelier is down in the dining room. I says, come on, Frenchie. I says, give me a break. He says, okay. So I went into the house, and I called Bobby Cohen, and I told him I passed. He says, I'll pick you up in 15 minutes. I no sooner hang up from him, the phone rings, and it's John Adamo. I don't know if you know John. John had also taken the bar exam, and he says, what are you doing? I says, Cohen's going to pick me up in 15 minutes. He says, where are you going to go? I says, I don't know. He says, I'll meet you at Holidays in 20 minutes. I says, okay. So John and Bobby and I spent the afternoon at Holidays celebrating. So then the next day, I called Harold Solovicic, and he says, okay, come on down. And at that time, his office was on the second, third floors of where Travato's clothing store is at 69 High Street. So we took a walk through the park, and we worked things out. And so he hired me, and not a lot of money, but he gave me the incentive. He says, you know, you'll get a salary each week, and whatever you bring in is yours. So I couldn't fault that because, I mean, I knew a lot of people in Westerly, and even though I didn't have any experience, you know, with Harold's assistance and so forth. And then I was with Harold from 65 until 77. And then we split, and I moved over to 15 Grove Avenue and rented an office that Joe Manfredi, the plumber, owned. And I was there for about 10 years. And then I moved up to 79 Franklin Street, bought that building, and that's been my office ever since.
Now, I know you've been very active in your faith as well. And Wesley, can you touch on that just a little bit?
Yeah, okay. So from the time I was a youngster, I went to Sunday school. We had a full-time rabbi, and I went to Hebrew school sometimes 2 or 3 days a week. I became bar mitzvahed at the age 13. I did get, because of my interrelationship with Boy Scouts, Boy Scouts has a religious award for Catholics, Protestants, and Jews. And the Jewish award was Ner Tamid, Eternal Light. And nobody in Washington County had ever gotten that award. I was the first one to get the Ner Tamid award, which was presented to me when I became bar mitzvahed in 1953. So my dad was very active in the synagogue, and when he passed away, I became president. So I've been president of the local synagogue for about 30 years now, and very active in programs and things of that nature.
And it keeps you well grounded.
It does, yes, yeah. And my son Peter is kind of following in my footsteps a little bit too.
That's wonderful.
So it's nice, yeah.
So 80 plus years in Westerly. You've already said you've had a life well lived with family and friends.
Yes.
What's your philosophy?
Be honest, be sincere, try to do the best job that you can, respect other people for what they believe and for what they do, be sincere, and follow your path, what you think is best for you, it's best for your family, and best for your friends, and best for the town of Westerly. I think it's a great town. I love it dearly.
So you're still working, still
I am.
practicing law, but what's going to happen when you take that shingle off the wall and call it quits?
Well, we've been going back and forth a lot lately. I'm 85 years old, and you know, the best thing I did, I think, for me as an attorney in my practice, about 15 years ago, I gave up trial work. So the only court I go to now is the probate court. But I gave up, you know, personal injury work. I gave up criminal. I gave up divorce work, all of that stuff. So that's for the young folks, very honestly. I mean, so my practice now is basically wills, trusts, probate, and real estate. I've also been on this general counsel to the Westerly Community Credit Union for 40 years. So that takes a fair amount of work, and I've been very close to the credit union all this time.
So what are you and Flo going to do for fun? You've been talking about work a lot. You got to have a little fun.
Yeah, I do have a place in Delray Beach, Florida, and up until COVID, we were going down for like 2 weeks, coming back for 3 weeks, going back down a couple, you know, let's say from off and on from October through March or April. But when COVID hit, we backed off a little bit. This past year, we went down in February for 3 weeks. And we were going to get down this month in October, but we didn't make it. Her back has been bothering her a little bit, so we backed off. So now we're looking at maybe, again, the end of January or February going down. I don't think I'll ever retire there full time. Westerly is my home. I'm going to be here. But we do, and we used to, even with the kids, and we took them sometimes with us or not, you know, we did a lot of traveling. We love to go on cruises. I think cruises are great. And, you know, the children, I mean, Peter, our oldest, is here in Westerly with us. My second child, Risa, she's an ER physician in Philadelphia. She's chief of ultrasound in the emergency room at Jefferson Memorial Hospital. And Hillary, our youngest, as I said, is a school teacher here. And my two granddaughters, Hillary's daughters, Abby, the oldest one, graduated Providence College last June. She's in her first year of law school at Suffolk University in Boston. Although she says to me, she says, "Papa, I don't think I'm going to come back to Westerly." I says, "Well, wait and see, honey. You know, times may change." And Chloe, the younger one, is in her second year at Providence College, and she's talking about becoming a physician's assistant. So I think as long as, you know, the family is in the area, you know, this is still going to be our base. And yeah, and I mean, I got a lot of friends here. You know, Wednesday morning, there's about 4 of us that go for breakfast at the Cook Goose. Thursday morning, there's another group of us. Saturday morning, there's another group. Your friend Larry Hirsch comes every once in a while, you know. So, I mean, we've got a nice group of people, and Westerly is great. I mean, the
No better place to be.
No, really. I think I thank God that, you know, I've been very fortunate, you know, to be able to do things, and things have worked out. And whenever I see somebody, I, you know, talk about them, I urge them, you know, to come here. And over the years, some of these people that, you know, 30 and 40 years ago came here, you know, because their parents, you know, they came from Springfield or Worcester or, you know, places like that. Now they're coming back here and buying homes here. So it's a great town.
It used to be our little secret. It's not such a secret anymore.
Right.